Hey, what's up YouTube? This is CJ. Gonna give you guys another quick update on the Reef tank. This time I'm really just want to focus on my filtration. I've never really covered, all of the equipment, the media, and the reasons I'm doing it. A lot of times it's going against some of the common beliefs in the hobby, but as you all know, there's multiple ways to do things in this hobby. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to some of my media first, and then we'll cover everything else. Now I know what you guys are thinking. This is it, just 4 jars on the table. Well, I hate to break it to you. This is how I've been running my Reef tank for the last 8 months. This is it. This is all I've used. So I may have mentioned it in a few vids. I'm not really going to cover it this vid, but I do use calc in my tank. I don't use any 2-part dosing or any other dosing on my tank at all. Only thing I've ever used is water changes and a small amount of calc in my auto top off. Now I have a 5-gallon reservoir. I'm only using about 1.5 teaspoons, maybe 2 teaspoons of this stuff. So, a really, really light concentration. I'm still learning how to use it, and just to make sure I take my time, I'm just using small amounts for now. And so far, everything's working out. Now, as far as my phosphate removal in my tank, to help with that, I am using phosguard. I'm not using any GFO or anything else that a lot of people use as far as Chemi Pure or anything else in my media. I do use about a half a cup of this in my reactor, along with some carbon, and I'll show you what I'm using as far as the carbon you see over there. But it's just small pellets. I make sure when I add this to my reactor, I'm rinsing everything with RO water. I do that. I don't know if that's an extra precaution I'm wasting or not, but I figured it absorbs phosphate from the water while I use tap water and waste it, while rinsing it. So that's just my thoughts, but a lot of people do it your way. Now, when it comes to carbon in the tank, I'm running it 2 different ways. The first being the simplest, just throwing it in a media bag, rinsing it with RO water, then just putting it in the back of the tank where the sump area is, letting water flow through it. And the second way is actually using it with my phosguard inside of my reactor. And I'll show you guys a little better detail when I show you my equipment a little later in the vid. But it does a good job, keeps the water smelling fresh, and that's it's pretty important with the tank being in my living room. Now, I know a lot of you guys may know what this is already, but for those who don't, it's going to be my biological media for my tank. It's made by Chem. It's called Pond Matrix. Really, really good stuff. I've actually had this jug for, I would say, a little over a year, honestly. I've filtered 3 different tanks with it. It's reusable as well, so you never have to get rid of it, which is great. I've used it for freshwater in my Ammonia tank. My first saltwater tank, if you didn't see it, it's on a playlist on my channel, 37-gallon cube by Marineland, I believe is what it's called. Check it out. And I've also used it on this tank, so great stuff. It also helps with, getting rid of your nitrates, which is even better. And it doesn't take much of it. It says 4 liters of this can filter 1,600 gallons of water. So just imagine a small amount of this can knock out my whole tank easily. So really, really great stuff. So I'm going to show you guys where I actually have it located in my tank. And also plans as far as, keeping some on deck, some seated, just in case I need to throw it in the quarantine and see the quarantine tank. So it's all working out well, and I'll share the reasons why I'm using this a little later in the vid, because it's really, really important with helping me break one of the major rules in the saltwater hobby. Give you guys a quick look behind the tank, starting with the media trays. Now, these are the stock trays that come with the JBJ. I opted not to buy any of the custom ones, at least yet, because this is working for me. I just stuffed the top with filter floss, just your normal, pillow stuffing you can buy from Walmart. Just take it out, throw it away, replace it every few days. Whenever the water stops running through it and starts running over it, I just swap it out. Now the rest of the chambers completely full with pond matrix. I mean, according to the container, 4 liters for 1,600 gallons ends up being around 400 grams I need to filter my tank's volume, which is a little less than a pound. So in my case, between both trays being full, I have 2 to 3 times the amount of pond matrix that I actually need in this tank. A lot of overkill, but also a lot of surface area for a lot of bacteria to grow, and for my tank to be completely safe with whatever I put in it, knowing that it can handle, at least biologically, what it needs to as far as keeping everything alive. So another thing, this second tray is a good backup plan. So if I do need to start a new tank up, I can just take that media out, throw it in a filter, and get that tank going as well. I am still running my reactor on my tank. This one's made by Innovative Marine. They have 2 different sizes. There's a mini and a mid-size. This is the smaller of the 2. Unfortunately, both fit, and I thought I ordered the larger one a long time ago, and it never worked out the way I wanted. So I have this. Now I do have it completely full with media, about a half a cup of phosguard, maybe a little bit more. Basically what I do, I add the phosguard, rinse it really good with RO water, put a layer of foam, put another layer of carbon, and then a layer of foam, and then flush it again before I add it to the tank. Reason for the carbon is I'm really paranoid about any of the phosguard particles getting loose in my tank. So the water flows through the carbon, and that hopefully will catch anything before it escapes, and I have any problems with my corals. Now the last thing I want to share with you guys is going to be the skimmer I'm using for my JBJ. It's the Tunze9004 model. Now it will fit in all 3 sections, but I have my objections to each section. That's why it's here. The first section, I can't fit it in there with a media basket, and I have to have mechanical filtration. I don't want any of that to try this any more than it gets back in the back of the tank to get back there. So I'm trying to limit that. The second chamber it fits, it's a tight squeeze. Water flowing around it trickles over, makes a lot of noise. I'm just not digging it in my living room. So it's in the return section by default, but that does not hurt its performance. I haven't had to adjust that thing in, I would say, a month and a half. Really been performing well. For those who may debate, do I need a skimmer for a Nano Reef tank? Or, you can get away with it. I'm sure a lot of people don't use it. But if you was to see all that nasty, foul smelling, the brown, the skim ate that nasty stuff that stuff pulls out of your tank. And just imagine if it wasn't there doing that, how much foulness would still be in your tank. I just can't describe it. Basically, in a nutshell, I would never run this tank without a skimmer. Now that's pretty much going to cover all the equipment and media I'm using. I know it's a short list. It's not really as much as you may have thought. There's no reef keepers, there's no apexes, there's no, expensive gear or automation doing my tank. The only automated thing I have is going to be my JBJ auto top off, which is a float switch attached to a 5-gallon auto top off reservoir that is set to turn off. If it's stuck on, it automatically shuts off after a minute. And a minute only puts a half a gallon of water in my tank, which would never overflow it. So, that's one of the wonderful things about an all-in-one with an auto top off that shuts off automatically. There's no risk for overflow. There's no risk for any problems. Now, one of the main reasons I shared my filtration with you guys is because I said before there's a rule this allows me to break, and it's the pounds per gallon. And when I say that, I'm referring to the amount of rock in my tank. You've heard the rules with reef tanks. You got to have 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds of live rock for every gallon to run a reef tank. Now, for those who do that, hey, more power to you. Nothing wrong with it. Do your thing. But me personally, if there's a way to save money and then allow me to be able to have the freedom to use any amount of rock I wanted in my tank, I would choose that. And the reason I can do that is because of the pond matrix. Now, I'm not selling, I don't work for them or anything. I'm just sharing my experiences with you guys. The reason I'm using it is because it helps me supply all that surface area those bacteria need that I'm lacking in the amount of rock. So I can run 25 pounds of rock, which is all I have in this tank, make a creative scape, leave a lot of open space, swimming room, and still not worry about any problems with my water quality or providing enough things to keep my nitrates in check and ammonia and all those things that kill your fish and corals and just will ruin your career when it comes to keeping a saltwater tank. Now, in my case, my parameters are not perfect, but but they are pretty consistent. I actually checked them right before this vid. It's been a little while since I ran through them all, but I'm gonna share them with you guys. I'll post them below. My ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates are all 0. My phosphates are 0.25. My pH, which is low, but it's been consistent. A lot of people say, hey, your pH has to be 8.2, 8.3. My pH has been setting at 7.8, 7.9, 7.8. Pretty much the whole time I've had this tank, I've always had low pH. That was part of the reason I tried the calc, but it just stays the same. But sometimes it's not about the number, it's just how consistent the number is, and that's my number. Now, when it comes to the other parameters, calcium is at 420, magnesium is at 1220, and my alkalinity is at 10. My salinity is at 1.25, and I run my temperature at 78 or 79 degrees. It doesn't fluctuate much. That's where my tank stays. So between those things, the small amount of media I'm using and, the small amount of equipment, I'm able to keep pretty good water quality. I'm able to keep my corals happy, keep my fish happy, and keep this tank completely stocked. As you can tell, it's chock full of corals. I would say close to 30 corals right now I'm running. And I have, I believe, 8 fish in there. I have a couple that are hatting. Speaking of fish, Christmas Raz has been out and about. If you didn't mention him, I didn't mention him earlier in the vid. He is out and about. He's just on a different sleep schedule than the rest of the tank. So he's been in there for a week. He still has to get used to it. But he is swimming around. You see him on the bottom left. So a pretty neat fish. But other than that, that pretty much covers everything I want to share with you guys. So that covers my equipment, and my water parameters and what I do to make it work. So if you guys have any questions or comments or, things you disliked or don't agree with, hey, let's have a good conversation. I love talking to you guys. Drop me a comment. Other than that, hey, like, subscribe. You guys do what y'all do. Y'all know how I feel about it. Y'all be easy. Happy reefing.